Started then, since everyone here is on the line. So hello everyone and welcome to the first in our engineering webinar series. We hope that you, your family, and colleagues are all as safe and happy as possible during these challenging times. My name is Chris Cogswell. I'm a customer consultant for the corporate Midwest and Southeastern United States for Elsevier Engineering. It's my pleasure today to introduce Michael Chrysler and TM Harover, two product managers with Elsevier who will talk to us today about remote access options for Novel and Engineering Village respectively. Please write your questions in the chat, which we will then answer at the end of the session as time allows. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Michael Chrysler. So have at it, Michael.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the call, and I hope I can answer any of your questions about remote access today for Novel. So, oops, yeah, there we go. So just as a reminder for Novel, Novel access is remote access when it comes to Novel. So if your users can gain access to Novel, it doesn't matter where they are, it will give them access no matter what. So I'm just going to we'll just go through each of the most common authentication methods and how your users can access it remotely and the steps they may go through in accessing Novel remotely as well. So first is probably the most common amongst all of our customers, which is IP address. Access anonymously through an IP address, so your users do that. This also does include proxy and VPN access. So if you have a proxy set up or if you have a VPN and Novel knows what that IP address, the access is going to be exactly the same as if you were sitting within your network. So for users, for a user, they would just be on the VPN or access through a proxy, or if they happen to be sitting in an office or have access to a network, in your network in some other way, they go to Novel directly, app.novel.com, and they'll gain access to Novel. It'll log them in as an anonymous user automatically. For the big takeaway for this is that if you have IP addresses on file and you're having problems with remote access, it may be because we don't have all of your IPs. Maybe your proxy IP is missing. Maybe your VPN IP is missing. You don't have to call them out specifically to Novel as a proxy or a VPN. We just need to know what the IP address is. So what if your users register? However they have registered, but they have a Novel username and password. This is probably the simplest and most straightforward remote access because this works no matter what. They have a username, which is their email address, work email address, and a password. They go to Novel, app.novel.com, they log in, and they'll have access to Novel directly. Pretty straightforward. Makes sense this would work without any issues on your side. So what if you have new users and they need to register to set up a username and password? So if we're accessing via the IP addresses, the same proxy or VPN that you may have already set up, when they go to Novel, they will automatically be prompted to register themselves on that page. They cannot get to any other Novel page. They can use any Novel link, and it'll still send them to the registration page to get started. So they'll enter the profile there. They'll name, email address, password. This actually has a little captcha on there as well. They submit that form, and they'll get an email. They have to have access to their work email addresses, by the way. They get that email address. They get the email from us with an activation link. They click that link. It prompts them to log in with the username and password that they just created, and then they have access to Novel. Now, the nice thing is on all these authentication methods, at least these two, once you've logged in, there's by default, Novel has a button that keeps them logged in. So the next time they go to Novel directly, they will not be forced to log in. If they happen to clear their cookies and cache in some way, they will be asked to log in again. But once that's in place, as long as they leave that button checked, they will automatically just be prompted to get in back to Novel with their already known username and password. Okay, so what happens if your users are not accessing from an organization IP, or you don't have IPs that you've provided us? So there are a couple of ways they can get access when it comes to this. The most common way will be through email domain. Novel accounts require that you set them up with email domains because it's actually part of a security check that we're doing when people register themselves to make sure that you're approving of them getting access to Novel. So we also use these email domains if we can identify them when they come to Novel as an unknown user. So your user logs in from, let's say, their home. They're not on the network. They're logging in from home. They're from their ISP IP address. So they can actually do guest usage on Novel. This doesn't provide them any access to content, but they can search and they can look at the pages and they can look at the table of contents or the browse and everything like that. But when they try to drill down to the point where they're actually accessing content, they want to see the pages of the book, they want to see that interactive graph, they will be prompted to verify themselves. And you'll see there's a form that they fill out that they just enter their work email address. If we recognize that work email domain, we will then send them into the registration process for your account. So they'll create the profile, create the account, get the activation link again, log in, and then they get access to Novel that way. For the majority of accounts, this will work. If you happen to have an account that shares a common email domain for amongst a number of organizations, usually this is not going to be. Usually this will be somebody where you may have a sister organization and you both have Novel accounts that you pay for separately or something like that. In that situation, those won't work, but we do have alternatives. But this will work for the vast majority of our customers. We just need to know your email domains. Oh, sorry, clicked too many times. So a couple of other things that we can set up for you. If you don't have IP addresses on file or your users are accessing without those IP addresses for some reason. First, all accounts have a registration URL. This account is a specific URL for your organization and it sends any user clicking it to the registration page for your account. If you don't have it, you can ask for it from your support team. And actually, that's probably the best way, but your sales team can get access to this pretty easily as well. And we can get you that registration URL. It's good to have as a backup. In the registration process, once they click the registration URL, is very much the same. They click this registration URL and go to the registration page and get that activation link and log in, and then they gain access to Novel. This isn't a security issue if someone else outside of your organization gets that registration URL, because as I mentioned, email domain is also a security check for Novel. So unless a user actually has an active email account under your organization, they're not going to be able to click that activation link to gain access to Novel. The other way we can set it up with this registration URL is add your organization under the search on the login page. You can see it. I've highlighted it in the chat where we can actually your users can actually search for your organization name on the login page. It'll send them to the registration page with this registration URL, and then the process is the same from that point forward. This can be a nice backup, especially if you're not employing any IP addresses on your account, because then you can tell your users a process to go through if they happen to not be registered. So finally, what if your users are accessing via a single sign-on option like SAML or Open Athens or Shibboleth? So this is something that you as an organization will have set up, that you already have a SAML already set up, or you're using Open Athens, or you're using a Shibboleth federation to provide SSO option authentication through your organization. If you've done this and you would like to use SSO for Novel, you would need to reach out to Novel support and your Novel sales team. Send it to both of them, because there's a setup process and integration process on Novel's side for all of these versions of SSO. Some can be very quick. Some can take a little bit of time. Nothing has to be very long at all here, but they do require an integration that you need to be aware of. And then once that's set up, the organization then determines if the SSO can be used remotely. from the vast majority of people, SSO is a remote access option. So they'll have some way for your users to authenticate via SSO and then into Novel. The primary way, once again, for SSO organizations, you can use the organization search. If we don't know who they are, they can enter their organization information into that search box. It'll route them through to the organization's login page, and then after successfully logging in there, back into Novel. Additionally, as part of this, if you're doing a direct SAML implementation with Novel, we'll provide a URL that does that same process by just clicking on it. And there are other things in that direct SAML implementation process that we can set up to make sure that your users gain access by, for example, using your IP addresses to notify users that they should be accessing through SAML and the direct link to that. If you happen to be using OpenAthens, OpenAthens actually has a redirect or wafeless URL tool, and that works with Novel. That works almost with all organizations that are integrated with OpenAthens, where you can create wafeless URLs to any particular Novel link, whether it be the home page or a specific book. All of those can be set up using that tool. And so those are, that works now, and so it can continue to work in the future. It's a great thing to set up as well. So if you are an organization that all of those authentication methods don't represent how you get access to Novel, if you fall outside of that and you need support with remote access, please contact me. My email address is m.chrysler@elsevier.com. And I'd be happy to work with you to gain access, set up remote access for your account. I will be surprised if there's a lot of people that fall outside of these methods, but I'm happy to work with you if you happen to do that. So how, as an admin or a customer, do I ensure to continued remote access with Novel? Well, I would recommend that you make sure your IP addresses, if you want to provide them, are on file, and make sure our emails or domains are correct. Those are very easy and simple things that will allow your users will cover the vast majority of your users gaining remote access to Novel. Ask for that registration URL, and then you can use it as a backup. Place it someplace internally as a backup, or have it on file so that if you happen to have a user who's having difficulty, you can share this with them. Novel support uses the registration URL as a backup for themselves if they're having trouble with one of your users. Unless it's something that you do not like to encourage your users to do, I would encourage your users to register, because users with a username and password aren't reliant on anything, on a VPN or proxies to access Novel. They have a username and password. If those things aren't working and they need to gain access to Novel, they can do it with that username and password. Always keep us in touch. Always keep us informed about any changes with your IP addresses as soon as you know them. I know I have many experiences with customers where they are the last person in the list of people to get notified by their IT about IP address changes or email domain changes. But as soon as you know about them, let us know, and we'll be happy to work with you to make sure those updates are made. And finally, I encourage you to use Novel support with any access questions. Send your users there if you have questions. Send your questions there. It's a good resource. There are lots of people manning those queues, and usually will get you a quick access. And if not, they can usually escalate you very quickly to the right people.
All right. Thank you, Michael, so much for that info on Novel. If you have any questions, please throw them in the chat there. And actually, I think, Mike, we're gonna hand that over to TM now, so you can present on EV, and then we'll do Q&A at the very end here. So, TM, if you want to share your screen.
Yes. You guys can all hear me?
Yep.
All right. Should be seeing my screen, remote access options for Engineering Village. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to kind of fly through this because Michael covered a lot of what we do as well on our product. Is pretty much the same as Novel. I'm assuming everybody on the call is familiar with both of our products and they know what to do, so we don't really need a product introduction, just more of how to get to remote access options. So those are my two assumptions. So yeah, let's get started. Here's a summary of the remote access options that Engineering Village provides. Again, these are pretty much exactly the same as what Novel offers. There's just some slight tweaks, slightly tweaked differences between them. So I'm not going to read these because the following slides cover each one individually. So VPN and proxies, just like Michael said, VPNs or proxies, either one, provide a common IP address for our system to allow access. So in a nutshell, the administrator or librarian or whoever sets up the VPN or proxy just lets us know what the IP address is of that proxy. We configure it on our side to say, hey, anybody come from that IP gets in. So a little bit of setup on the librarian or administrator side, a little bit of setup from Elsevier support, contact them to say, let them in on this IP range. And then after that, it just works. The main thing I want to point out on here is if you use OCLC's Easy Proxy service, which a lot of our customers do, we've gone to a new system lately called the Elsevier's identity system. And there's a slight change in your proxy stanza where you'll need to include id.elsevier.com as one of the allowed redirect services. Because what Engineering Village does is when you come to us, the IP address check is actually done from that domain. Then it comes back to EV to let you in. So just need to make sure that that domain is on the stanza. So pretty simple walkthrough tutorial of what you need to do to get that kind of access. This example is from Harvard. A lot of our customers have a page set up where you click on a link to get to the proxy, and Harvard's no exception. You click on their link for Compendex, the name of one of our databases. What that does is takes you over here to step 2, which you authenticate through Harvard's authentication system. When you come back, you'll be on an address like a proxy address shown down here below the screenshot. After you've authenticated, that proxy address is tied to an IP range that gets you access. And again, one more note that the authentication in between is actually done at id.elsevier.com, so that needs to be accounted for in your VPN or proxy setup. Email domain. This is very, very similar to what Novel and Michael just talked about, so I'm going to fly through this. You give us an email domain of whatever your company uses. We register it with your account. Anybody coming in, to skip to the tutorial, anybody coming in, they would not have access, so they would get this landing page in Engineering Village that says, hey, we can go ahead and check for you. When they click check, they get a prompt to put in their email address. The system would then say, hey, yeah, we found you. You're allowed to have access, but we need to either verify your identity, because you've been here before, but we need to make sure that it's still you, or, yep, you're allowed in, but we don't have any record of you, so please register. Either one of those cases, you go through the verification, authentication stuff, and you end up on EV, and you'll be registered to that account. Very, very similar to Novel, not much difference. Federated Login, again, Michael did a great job going over this. We support we support Sample-based, Shibboleth, Open Athens, whatever you want to call it. There's so many names for Federated Login. Just like Michael said, the key here is, yes, we support all those, but you have to work with with the Elsevier support team to make sure that your account is configured for whatever federation or sample procedure you've set up. So there's some exchange of information there that we use to get you in. Just like I really want to reiterate what Michael said too, that the waveless URL can be used with EV. And if you're not familiar with that term, all it is a shortcut. You'll see it here in a second when I go through the tutorial. Something I forgot to mention, these slides will be made available to you afterwards, and I tried to format mine so that the same setup over and over. There'll be kind of a what's required and how does it get set up, and then there'll be a direct link to the support topic on this, which they should be in sync. So if you need this information, don't worry that I'm flying through it. It's all going to be made available. So tutorial-wise, again, you come to TV, you don't have access. There's a lot of steps involved here, but basically click on it. You can click on sign in via my institution. You look up your institution. You pick the one that corresponds to you. You click sign in. I'm not showing the screen in between this, but whatever mechanism you use to do your SSO sign in, whether it be Open Athens or something else, you do that mechanism, then you come back. You'd be presented this screen. Just a point of emphasis here, some of our customers find this slightly confusing. You can just go ahead and click continue without registering. What that does is say, yeah, we know you have access through Open Athens. I don't want to register at this time. We do encourage you to register though, because that associates your registration with that Open Athens or whatever technique you got in, so that you can come in seamlessly from then on. And plus, you get all personalization options that can help you out with the research. And then I put one more bullet in here that the waveless URL, if you use it, skips all these steps and would just take you directly to your SSO provider. You log in and you end up here. So it saves you a lot of steps if you use those waveless URLs. Once you're in, you should see that if you came in anonymously or if you registered, either way, you should be associated with the account that provided access. And lastly, we offer bulk ID registration, which is similar to Novel's registration page. The only slight difference here is you work with Elsevier support. They will generate a list of these bulk IDs, and then the administrator works with their institution's users to hand out these registration IDs and get you access. So the tutorial looks like this. The administrator of the account works with Elsevier support or a tool we have called the admin tool. If you're not familiar with that, feel free to hit me up after this presentation for more details, but you can set up a bulk ID in there as well. But either way, you get a list of the bulk IDs. The administrator then sends a link to users. They send this registration link, and they'll send them a registration ID and passcode. User enters that information, granted access to EV. So that's it. That's all the methods to get you into Engineering Village when you're not in a recognized IP range, although VPN and proxy, I guess, are essentially recognized. And then this last page that you'll get just has some quick links. The EV main support page. So if you go here, you can start a ticket. The remote access support page covers all these topics I just went into. So if you want to refer to it on the web, you can get to it there. And then just for completeness, I included the fact that you can go straight to our ID system, id.elsevier.com, and you don't have to start your journey from Engineering Village. So if you have other Elsevier products, Scopus, ScienceDirect, Reaxis, SciVal, a lot of those products are on this common authentication system. So you can start here if you need to get to that. That is it, Chris.
All right, thank you so much, TM. If you want to, I guess we can leave that page open. That's fine.
Sure.
Are there any questions or comments or things from people who are attending? You can throw them in the chat, or of course you can. Well, actually, I think you can only throw it in the chat because you're listed as attendees here on this webinar. So, any questions or anything? So, guys, I actually had a question for you. So, is the login for Novel the same as the login for EV? That's a question we get from a lot of our customers a lot of the time. So is that the case, or are they different?
Go ahead, Michael.
Okay. No, they aren't. Novel is not currently on ID Plus, which
Okay.
is the system that EV recently integrated with. We are on the path to doing so, but it's still probably a little ways off. So no, not yet would be the best answer to put up there.
I do want to emphasize though, Chris, for anybody that would be listening, since we share the same, if you guys are on an SSO, like a federated login, if you're logging in through there, you do kind of have the same access to both products via that kind of authentication.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you've done the integration with both, and you log into one, if you happen to go to the other one, we will know that you're logged in and be able to get you won't have to log in again. That's
yeah, I'm pretty sure EV does a similar thing. Same thing, Michael, with proxies and VPNs, right? If they've set up a VPN on their side, you have the Novel has the IP and we have the IP, seamless access. So
exactly, absolutely, that's right.
Perfect. Okay. So we did have one question in the chat here. So what is the best and recommended first place to go for help with my Elsevier engineering resources?
The support links that the EV support link here is a great place to start. All these are kickoff. Like if you would click on this link for remote access, that's actually it's a sub page under our main support page for engineering products. This support page is different than Novel support page though.
Yeah.
So you probably have to use a combination of the two to get the full breadth of an engineering support.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to share in chat. I was just going and grabbing it. So I can share with you guys what that will be. I'm going to throw it in chat here. This is the support center support hub for Novel. There are some specific remote access FAQs in there that will answer, that cover the exact same information I shared in my presentation as well. I don't have a single support page for that, but those FAQs are the best place to get started for Novel as well.
Yep. And you can always reach out to your customer consultant or your account manager, who will also be able to get you in contact with these two fine gentlemen here on the call today. So with that, actually, we're going to end up here, or we're going to end this session. So I want to thank everyone for attending this webinar session. We're going to be holding these each Wednesday and Thursday at this time. And the next session is going to be GeoFacets 101 on May 6th. If you'd like information or an invitation to that session, please feel free to reach out to your customer consultant, or you can send me an email at at c.cogswell@elsevier.com. I'm going to throw that in the chat as well. Thank you again so much for attending this.
Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, Michael and TM, for your time today and all of your expertise as always.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Stay healthy and safe.
Yes, wash your hands. All right, thanks, everyone.